These were the trails, and this is from Joe Clark. These river wash stones were from Joe Clark's, and Joe Clark was a founder of the Ozark Society, and he always thought it was very interesting what was happening over here.
Yeah.
This house was actually his brother's house. So, you know, there's a lot of connections to him, and so that's part of what was
How
done.
long have you had it?
About 13 years. These rocks here were so that drainage could come through this rock and go through into here, and they're just laid out along. In fact, when you see the plants, they're laid out like layers, and that's our typical landscape, are those layers of rocks. And so that was something that was important. And then these two seats, actually, one looks to one garden on one side of the pathway, and the other seat looks to the other garden. They're very carefully seated, so you can see that. And one other thing, this is very important. There was an oak tree, and it's over at the side here, and there was a driveway put in there, and you would have had to build up the edge because the driveway was quite high, and so all these rocks were put in there, just a huge pile of rocks, and the tree survived, which was very important. Because if you had dug down in the roots for a foundation for that drive, it would have died. What I was really trying to get at here was the idea that when you see the landscape, you see these levels of, because we're sedimentary rock here, and that's how they look. So boulders are not right. Boulders really aren't the right thing for our area. And a lot of people put boulders in their gardens, but these rocks are really the sedimentary look.
I first want to tell you that I'm Nancy Varvel. I'm the chair of the Tree and Landscape Advisory Committee for the city of Fayetteville. And one thing you might want to know is they've recently decided we should change our name to Urban Forestry Advisory Board. And there are other members of our committee here, and I want them to tell you who they are.
Lois Lazaric. Emily Cates.
And?
I think we should call ourselves the committee formerly known as the Tree and Landscape.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. And let's see. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to say that right here you've been signing up. I hope everyone that comes here today has signed on this list. And we have a lot of people's names that have attended past events, and we just want to get you on one list, email list, so we can shoot out information to you when we have future events. And also, you can give us ideas for future events here. If you put your phone number down and say, call me, I've got an idea. We also are working on invasive species around in town, and if you kind of want to be always notified and related to invasive species concerns, let us know. We have special brochures that we printed about that. Many people helped us print, and Missouri has a special brochure that you can have a copy of if you want that relates to the bush honeysuckle. These are miserable. They're all over Fayetteville, and we just happen to have some, and if you want to have this, we spread the word as much as we can about that.
Are those some of the plants we can take along to?
If you want, we'll show you lots of them. Take home. Okay. Alrighty, well, in the city code, part of our mission is educational outreach, and so this year we're doing a series of events that relate to helping us all take care of our land in a manner that takes care of the environment but better. And this is just in a series of events, and we're having another one pretty soon as we find out where it's going to be and who's going to speak on it, about alternatives to lawns. And we cannot find a site for that, a place that is a meadow or a grassland, and we cannot find a speaker who specializes in that. So I'm asking any of you that have ideas on that subject to talk to me or any of us in the committee and let us know, because we are going to have that meeting. We just don't know how we're going to have it, who's going to have it, but we do want to present that sometime this year or next year. I have a new little cherry tree, and I got 3 cups of cherries on it last year. I had put a netting over it. It had many, many blooms this year. Guess how many cherries it's gone on it this year to get them ripe? Fewer. And there's a good reason. I'm worried about who is pollinating. Where's my little bees? Where are the little things that pollinate my cherry trees? And and that's food for people, not my cherry tree, but I mean in general, food in general needs pollinators. So there's a really important reason to preserve native species. And there's a person named Julie Holland at Holland's Wildflower Farms. She's the one that put into my head a really important reason to have native species here in Fayetteville. It relates to Do you want to look like any place in the whole country, or do you want to look like the Ozarks and the prairie that we are? Do you want to look like us and have a special, unique character, or do you want to just look like anybody that went and bought a whole bunch of plants and took them home? And that's another reason why it's kind of nice to have native species. Anyway, Karen has become a specialist at this. She designed Compton Gardens.
I'm an experimenter.
Compton Gardens up in Bentonville, which is a very big, beautiful complex if you haven't been up there. And she has been applying those principles here at home, and she was the one that's going to tell us what she knows about and what she's learned about it today in her talk.
I'm a landscape architect by training, and there's a lot of kind of cross-fertilization that goes on with training about landscape, but there's a lot more, I think, complexity to these kinds of environments because typically when you design a landscape, and people are always saying, well, just make it so it's easy to maintain, you know, and that's okay, but you have to have an interest in the plants, and you have to want to do something about your own environment, and that's really what got me started. My own this place is so beautiful. The Ozarks is so incredible. I was amazed when I moved here. It was like 25 years ago at what I saw here. So that was where I really started with what do we have, and why is it so important, and how can we work with that? There's this book called Noah's Garden, and Sarah Stein says, America's clean, spare landscaping and gardening tradition has devastated rural ecology. The relentless spread of suburbia's neat yards and gardens has caused local extinctions of such important predators as foxes, dangerously reduced the habitat of many kinds of birds, and has threatened the total of extinction of fragile species such as orchids that rely on a single pollinator. Butterflies that require a specific host plant, and by the way, this is something that I'm trying to learn more about. This is not kind of where I started. I didn't start with that concept, though I have been doing a bit of research on the plants I've got. Songbirds that inhabit deep woods, and turtles whose routes to breeding sites are interrupted by roads and obliterated by drainage projects. How many of you have seen those turtles try to cross the road and gotten out of your car and take them off the road? So entire communities of plants and insects, the well-stocked pantry of our native countryside, have been wiped bare. This is not someone else's problem. We, you and I, and everyone who has a yard of any size, own a big chunk of this country. Suburban development has wrought habitat destruction on a grand scale, and to reverse this process and reconnect as many plant and animal species as we can to rebuild intelligent suburban ecosystems requires a new kind of garden. And I think this is what the group, the forestry group, which has a new name, is really working on. And I'm just so glad they are. And a new kind of gardener, which we're all that way. So, the concerns. What are the concerns? Well, typically the concerns would be the slope, the trees, where things are. And I did start with that, and you're welcome to look at the base plan that I did, and it was really helpful, I think, would be helpful for you too, because it does tell you where the paths are, where the trees are, and it tells you how much space you have. So your tendency, I think, sometimes is to put a plant here and a plant there and a plant there and not group them and not know how much space you have. And if you start with a plan, then you can always change it when you're on the ground, but it helps you get organized. So I would suggest just kind of talking to me a little bit about that when you get a chance. So the major goal, though, is to add to the value of our native landscape, even though we're surrounded by concrete and houses. So that's where we're all going. Now, I want to just mention a couple other things before we start. We're going to take a tour through the garden. There are signs, and I will talk about each of the plants as we go. We have the oak and hickory woodland. That's the Ozark woodland is oak hickory forest. And they are complex. You wouldn't think. In fact, I used to take my kids through those oak hickory, and they would get so tired of me pointing out all the plants. They just didn't get it. But there is so much there to see, and I was always interested in, do I know every plant that's growing there? I was always interested in that. So we have much more life and much more variety in our woodlands and in our prairies, because even though we don't see any prairies, we're beginning to get them back, which is very exciting, I think. And so part of the planting we can do is the prairies, which are in the sunlight, and then the oak woods, which are the shaded ones. So there's kind of a distinction there, but we can put them in both of them in our gardens. So I wanted to show you a book here, which, amazingly enough, Peterson Guides, you know Peterson Guides. Well, there's an introduction here from the man Peterson. And he says, you know, for years we did ID books. But this is about the ecology. This is about the relationships in the eastern forest. And I was very excited when I found this book. And it was not, I found it in a bookstore, and then I couldn't find it again. It was like, it's rare. Now, I hope it's not that way anymore, because I would absolutely recommend you getting this book, because it'll give you some clues about why things are the way they are. For example, these trees don't have leaves on them when spring comes. And there's a certain number of flowers. We get many more flowers blooming in the woods when we don't have leaves on the trees. So there's this kind of amazing connection between what's on the ground plane, then the shrubs, which also are above what's on the ground plane, and then the trees. So you get these connections. And just let me read to you what happens in my garden. First is bloodroot. I have one bloodroot plant. First flower I've got. Toothwort. That's about the second flower I've got, toothwort. Then comes trout lily, violets, Jacob's ladder, Ozark phlox, trillium, I have a few of those, and iris cristata. Then fiddleheads of ferns begin to open, along with May-apples, wild ginger, and heuchera. Wild geraniums are next. They lift their lavender flowers below understory trees, such as flowering dogwood. Now, flowering dogwood really comes pretty early, and so does our redbud. Columbine then comes, and we've still got some of that in the garden. Drops its fairy flower from a delicate stem. I love those flowers. Spiderwort blooms each day and leaves a wet tear behind. Then species of shrubs leaf out. St. John's wort, now that hasn't come yet. Fothergilla has already come and gone. And spice bush, I've got one over here. Other bushes, understory trees leaf out. Sassafras, buttonbush, and pawpaw. And you'll see those today. Finally, the overhead canopy comes out. You see how it works? The overhead canopy finally begins to come out, and it's not quite completely shady yet, but almost. And I do have black gum here, which is kind of an odd thing on top of a hill, but I do have black gum. So that eliminates much of the energy of sunlight that has brought spring growth to the plants below. So I didn't get that until I actually read about it. I kind of intuited it, but I didn't quite understand how it all worked. And that was like the first statement here. So then another pattern, which he doesn't talk about, that I have noticed here, is how do plants spread in the garden? Why, when I planted 2 hollies over there, are they showing up under practically every tree? Birds. I'm sure it's the birds. They're carrying them over there. Penstemon. Why does one variety of penstemon grow up by the road and the other variety of penstemon grow down here?
Soil conditions.
Drought, more drought up at that part. They like it better up there. The other one likes maybe a little bit wetter soil. So anyway, let's see. Oh, lots of plants reseed, of course. Baptistia, blue salvia, sedges, St. John's wort, they spread nearby, and of course that's seeding, so that's obvious. And then, of course, other plants go underground. Irises, these ginger, they're all connected. So anyway, it's very interesting. You learn a lot. by figuring out what happens and why you get things where they go and that type of thing. Okay, so I just wanted to mention about the soil. This soil is difficult, and so it took a lot of digging. And over there next to those steps, when you come down, just take a look at the pile of rocks there that I'm going to make a bed out of. But I dug them out of an area that was probably 6 by 10 feet. And when you see the pile, now when the soil's wet, you can dig it. When the soil's dry, forget it. You can't, because there's too much clay in the soil. And so you do a lot of amending, and that's the way it goes. So we want to get started. Didn't want to keep a lawn really, but I wanted to be able to see the plants and kind of showcase them around the lawn, so I kept a little bit of lawn. That was important. Now the other thing that I just, you think of a front yard, you don't think of a path through a front yard. And one day I was going, now wait a minute, I want to see these plants. How can I see these plants? I need a path. So that was this one. It was laid out with a hose. That's what they always tell you. Take a hose so you can get the curves, and it worked. And down at the end, I didn't want that tree roots to be too destroyed, so you see I made a curve around the tree roots there. So that was an important part of the design. Now, these are Black-Eyed Susan. This I bought as gold sturm. It has kept reseeding, and it's kind of looks more wild. A lot of these plants, if I bought them as a particular type of plant, when they tend to reseed, they tend to go back to their original, which is great. So they don't, they're not just like boom. They're smaller flowers. They just look like they're back to the natural. Gillenia. This one I got from Mary Ann King. I didn't see it in her recent catalog. It may be there. It's a very interesting plant, it turns out. It's called Indian Physic, and it's also American Ipecac. Well, turns out Ipecac is so you'll throw up. Okay, well, and look how beautiful it is. Look at those beautiful little flowers. I mean, it's just like delicate.
Have you tried to propagate that at all?
I have one there growing. No, I've just taken the seedings, and kept them. And then there's one behind. So it can.
Is it slow to grow?
No, not really. No, well, okay, that's 2 years old. Yes, it is slow. Yeah, I guess you'd call that slow. So anyway, it's a delicate and graceful plant. I absolutely love it. So I'm hoping that you can find that if you're interested. Iris cristata. I was unaware of what you could do with Iris cristata. I got 6 plants from a student of mine from his family garden in Little Rock.
Wow, look at it.
And it will do this in a year.
Oh my God.
Now, I had a problem. You'll see over there. No, it doesn't spread much, but if you pull it out, it's underground. It's got the rhizome underground. And you get it early in the spring before it's really, because it's, of course, irises grow right under the surface, so they can't dry out, and you have to water it very carefully for a while until the roots grow. But I did one over there when we had that 80-degree, we'll see it, one in the corner, and it's growing, but nowhere near what I actually planted. Some of it died. So I would recommend early. Okay. So anyway, this is so fantastic, and there's a picture down here. It's just covered with light blooms. It's very beautiful, and it's a ground cover. I didn't know it would turn into a ground cover, and it did. Okay, bluewood sedge is right along here. I've had a little problem with that. It's okay. It's a sedge. I like sedges, and I've got quite a few of them. All right, so let's move on now to this spot right here, I think, is where we need to be. Yeah. We've got a sign here, and you can just kind of move over. These shrubs are a grand success. Usually getting a shrub is, I think, a little hard to do, but this one flowers. It's shrubby St. John's wort. Now, you can find it in the woods, but it'll be a lot smaller than this. But once you treat it nice, it grows into a shrub, and there's a whole section of it over there also. And now, one thing it does is it will reseed like crazy. But it's not hard to pull out, and if you put enough mulch under it, you'll find that you don't get so much of it. So it will bloom, and probably it'll bloom in, I don't know, Probably another month it'll bloom. And by the way, I read that the bumblebees just love it, but it has no nectar. The flowers have no nectar. So apparently butterflies aren't interested. Now let's see. This is new to the garden right here, Amsonia. A lot of people know this. This is willow leaf Amsonia. I have 2 Amsonias in the garden. Both of them are blue right now. And they're a nice kind of, well, the other one looks fernier than this, but they're just a nice one. Oh, that's the ferny one. Yeah. I just transplanted that about a year ago. Wonderful. And in the fall, it says, thank you, a lovely yellow color. Now, it depends on when it gets cold. Some years it won't do it, and some years it will. But you can see what a lovely plant it is as a background. And okay, so this is so strange. This phlox, I love it, but I can never get it to fill a whole bed. I found that in looking at it that they don't know why. They simply don't know why. It's very kind of ticky. But I do get a few. And when I first planted it, I got a whole nice pink bed, and it just goes away. Yeah, it just goes away, and I don't know the reason. They think maybe wildfires have an effect on that. So this is my herb garden, so we'll go past that. I've got 1 Amsonia that I couldn't get rid of there. I like it too much. Baptisia, about 6 inches under the surface. You know, when you've got rocks under things, they can't get the wet can't come up underneath it, so the grass just wasn't growing. So that kind of tells you what these rocks do. This was a very odd looking place. Somebody had decided to just create the rocks here, and grass was all around it. Then I came home from vacation, and I went, these rocks aren't in the right place anymore. And then I looked over in the lawn, and there were tire tracks going up there. And I went, and one of these bushes had been pushed down the hill. And I went, oh my gosh, somebody ran into the garden and got hung up, thank goodness, did not go into that. And so that's why they're like that, because they got separated. Okay, this is a Baptisia, and this year it's the earliest blooming Baptisia. Baptisia is a great plant. If you don't know about Baptisia, this is a plant that will bloom in this season after all the woodland plants have bloomed. And it's a grand success. And it looks like lupin. I don't know if it's related to it or not, but it looks like lupin. In fact, one place I looked at, redneck lupin is what they called it. So, there's one. Now that one has never reseeded. That one up there, do you see that that has reseeded? And I have moved it to there, the yellow one, and it's fabulous. It's just a fabulous plant. And I've got 2 more down there. Unfortunately, I don't have any plants that I dug out for you guys. I'm really sorry about that, but I had a few, and they were up near the road, and I got rid of them last year, and you're going to say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Because they are beautiful. But you've got the name. You can hunt them up. And okay, so that's pretty much it. Now we're going to talk about, I do want to talk about this iris here. We're going to talk about some of these other plants. Oh, by the way, we'll talk about that too. That's a penstemon. That's the one that grows kind of down the hill. It's beginning to bloom, which... Okay, southern blue flag iris. Now, this is supposed to grow in the wet, and it's doing okay. It does get pretty dry looking through the season, and I've tried it in different places. The one set that's up the hill there just does terribly, and so that is not a place to put it. Down at the bottom of a hill where you get the wetter soil, that's where you want to put this. It has the most beautiful iris flower. Does anybody, you know that flower? It looks like an orchid. To me, it looks like an orchid. It's really a fabulous flower. And there's one blooming up on top there, apparently. And when we go around, I'll show you where it is. So you will actually be able to see the flower. I don't know why one flower is blooming right now. But there's pictures here of it. And they don't come up like the ones that we all buy, you know, from a nursery. They kind of bloom down among the leaves.
Could that be also the dryness? We had
Could
them in
be.
a lake at home, and they were 3, 4
Oh,
feet
okay,
high,
okay.
But they were in the mud, in the water.
Sure. So that probably is
Might be.
a better location for them, actually. Is it starting? Oh yeah, I see them. Yeah. Well, a few days. Okay. Okay. There's a few other plants here, but we'll look at them on the other side. But I do want to mention that this is a coneflower, and I planted it here, and I love it up there. Boom. All right. So now we're going to go over here, and some of you may know it. It's hummingbird clethra. Hummingbird clethra. Has anybody heard of? You all know about this? Well, what's your experience with it? This one is hummingbird is short. This one will never grow above this. And one of the reasons I want short things is this house. I wanted to kind of show off the house. So, but this blooms in August when nothing else is blooming. You cannot believe the buzz that is around this plant in August. It's like just everything is buzzing around this plant. It's amazing. So this is definitely worth having because butterflies and bees just love it, and they guess they don't. It's called clethra.
What color is the blossom?
It's white. There's a picture there if you want to look at it when you get a chance. This was kind of one of the areas that I said is going to be a wildflower area, which I guess what I meant by that was what came out in the spring. And I do have something there. If you look at the leaf, not the columbine, because that's another plant, but below those columbines, you'll look at a plant there that kind of has a ladder-looking leaf. Okay, that's called Jacob's ladder, and that blooms earlier than the columbine. And it's been very successful in this garden. It really does well, and in fact, it will reseed. Then this is spiderwort, which we'll look at later, and that right there is Ozark, the Ozark phlox divaricata. Now that's new, and somebody told me it was at Walmart, and it was. Wow. And they didn't know what they had, but I bought it. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, I hope so. I do also have here, which you can't see, and I've only got a few of them. I have the Virginia bluebells. And I think what I'll do is maybe pull them together when they come up again and see if I can get them to grow a little bit more so you can see them. I have a little violet here. This is a yellow violet. And it kind of acts like a weed, you know. It'll grow everywhere, just like violets do. But it actually hasn't spread much here, partly because the soil is not the best. So it just makes a little clump there, and it blooms really early, and it's very pretty.
So what is this?
Oh, that is the other penstemon. Now, I've got a lot more of them up there, but you can see how they, remember I was saying they just come up? Well, there's a good example.
And it's under a tree.
And that one came under a tree, yeah. Now, they're a lot taller and a lot nicer up there, but, you know, it just shows up. So that's what's fun about this. And you see, too, you see our hollies. You see, this is not a native to Arkansas. It's a red twig dogwood. I came from Michigan. It grows in Michigan. And for some reason, I had seen it grow here with the variegated leaves better than the others. So I just decided I would try to keep it alive, and it's doing okay. It is a native, you know, but only further north. All right, which is not native here. One day I was in my mother's house in California, and I walked by this house near her house, and this guy had irises just lined up in the front. He had 100 irises in his front yard, and it was a tiny front yard. And I said, "Oh, I'm a landscape architect. What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm dividing them all." And then when I told him what I did, he went back and he got me bags and bags and bags of irises. And I gave away most of them, and this is what was left. I mean, he had so many varieties. So I just decided, well, you know, I'll plant them. I want to say something about this shrub here. I don't know if you're familiar with this shrub, but this shrub is actually existed here. I mean, this grew here native, as a native plant. This is called coralberry or Indian currant. it kind of looks like a honeysuckle, so it's a little hard to pull the honeysuckle out of it sometimes, and I've done that several times, but you can tell because it's got smaller leaves. And the thing about it is, starting in about October, it has these pink berries, and they will be along the stems, and the birds like them, and those berries will stay there until about December. And then they'll fall off or just shrivel. This is great because this was here. I think this is a shortleaf pine. In fact, I know it is because I looked at it pretty carefully. Look across the street. Look at the pine over there. That is a white pine. So that's a difference. You know, here's the problem. They've got a problem with that, and we used to be a lot more of them along that line. But look how this is growing. And really, the only thing that gets it are those ice storms. But, you know, sometimes it just goes back up and you're okay.
It really does look like a honeysuckle.
It does, and when it first comes out, the leaves are bigger, and that's when it really looks like honeysuckle. See that? But they don't. They, you know, it's not.
Oh, so this is younger and this is older?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
I know.
How do they do that?
I don't know, but it's not.
This is the coralberry?
Yes.
It's also called buckbrush.
Okay, buckbrush.
Coralberry is such a much nicer
I
name.
know.
What's the other name?
Buckbrush.
Buckbrush.
This is something that is, it's related to a native. Let's put it that way. I always loved this cut leaf sumac, and so that's what it is. And it just takes off by itself and does very well. And it's a good spot for it. 2 reasons. It's on a western slope, western sun. It takes drought. It doesn't have a problem with drought. And the second thing is that it tends to spread, and it's a bit big. So if it's a small garden, you may not want that. So here, it can't go much of anywhere. So that's why it works. All right, and down here I want to show you this oak tree which was saved. Now look at this driveway here. You see how this driveway had to be built up. There was a hill here, and you've got to get down below, and I'll just tell you to go down below and look at how many rocks are there that are saving that tree. You can't imagine what a pile of rocks there was. Foundation for this drive, you'd kill that tree. But it didn't die. Okay, so we're going to go back up to the corner now. Okay, blue sage. As far as I know, that's the only native sage we've got. And it grows quite tall, and actually I cut it back. I cut it back in, because it'll bloom like in August. And I'll cut it back when it gets to be about 3 feet high, just so it doesn't flop over, because otherwise, and it could be that I've got better soil than it normally grows in, you know, which probably may be part of the problem. Okay. Okay, and it reseeds quite a bit, but you know, you can just pull it out. But the color of the sage is what's so amazing. It's a sky blue. It's a very pretty color, and it's not a sage color you would normally see if you bought a sage for your garden. Usually that's purple or red or something like this. Is very unusual color. So it's definitely worth it. And it's native. The holly. This is one that's used everywhere. It's but it is a native holly, not for the Ozarks, but it is a native holly. There's a problem with putting it by the road, though. The dogs seem to think that it's where they need to go. Yes. Okay, let's see if I've got anything else. Oh, this is a mallow. Okay, this is called purple poppy mallow. And what it does, and the reason I've got room around it, you'll notice there's not much growing around it, is it will spread out about 2 to 3 feet on the ground, and then it will come up with these very bright pink flowers. And it can take drought no problem. This is actually a seed from another one I had over there. It hasn't seeded a lot, but it has seeded at least once. And this is one that I moved to this spot. Okay, this is the Amsonia, the other Amsonia I was talking about, and it seems to be fine with a drought. It's very pretty, fern-like. It reseeds right here. This is all reseeded right at that spot, and partly because I took it out in other places, but it seemed to like this spot. And this, interestingly enough, was found in the Ouachitas in 1940. Somebody, probably somebody's seen it before, but somebody who was knowledgeable dug it out or found it, and it's considered fairly uncommon. But it seems to very much like this area. And this baptisia, the thing that's unusual, in addition to the yellow flowers, is that it's called spherocarpa. Spherocarpa means round seed. Sphere, round seed. And that's its name, Baptisia spherocarpa. So it does reseed. I just don't happen to have any right now, but it does reseed. Okay, let's go on down here. It was given to me by Joe Clark. Joe Clark was one of the founders of the Ozark Society and saved the Buffalo River. And he used to live over here, and his brother lived in this house. So he had these things in his garden, including the spiderwort that I've got down at the other end. That was his. And all the rocks that I've put along my trails. So this I got from him. So that's why it's here, because of Joe Clark. Okay, river oats. These river oats are lovely. I've got a picture of them. When they grow up, they have these river oats. Now, if you don't cut off those river oats, you will have them everywhere. So I do want to say that's the way you control them. A lot of times, native plants need a little more control because if you want them in a garden, you don't want them to take over. So that's what you need to do with these. And then you save a few to put inside for some kind of bouquet of dried oats. This is called side oats grama. And this one down here, I'll talk about that's something else.
Grass.
The grass is called side oats grama. And it's a bunch grass. And I didn't cut it down soon enough, part of it. You can see over where I did cut it down, it is growing very well. And it has a stem that comes up, and it just has these oats-looking things, but they all go on one side, which is why it's called side oats.
On the side?
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. It's the state grass of Texas. So the birds like the seeds, and it's okay with drought. Now, this over here is called Camisia, but it's got another name. It's a fairly, it's a totally rare plant for Arkansas because there's two types, and they grow in Washington State. Now, why did I put it here? Because it looked so unusual in the catalog, and I wanted something different. So I bought some bulbs, and it's very beautiful. But I don't usually do things like that, and usually when I do it, they don't come out well. They don't grow. But this did. And I've divided it, and this year I had just a whole bunch of it. I had like 50 of those nice spires of light blue. This was one of the first gardens that I designed, but it's changed a lot. Let's see. This is something that everybody really loves as a sedge. Sedges are great for gardens. This is called Morning Star Sedge. And look at the seed heads. And it doesn't spread a lot. You know, I've got one over here. It's not bad for spreading, but it's very beautiful. And there's more of that penstemon. Likes it there. Now this is another baptisia, which is the one you always read about. This is the one that's the blue. See, blue false indigo. I guess it was used as a dye. So that's, but see how many more there are? And there's many more listed. So see if you can figure out some more we can plant, because they're beautiful plants and they bloom just about now, and you get a really good show out of them.
They look so pretty next to the penstemon.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And of course, in the morning, guess what that is? Spiderwort. So I've got blue everywhere. And these iris, I just put them in here because I didn't get enough blooms at one time, and I thought I want some more of something, so I stuck them in there. Not native. Okay, this is an ironweed. right there, that's an ironweed. Now, it's a little different than the one you see. There's one that grows right down this road here. It's a little bit neater looking, and I got it from Mary Ann King, and I can't tell you what variety it is. But you all know what ironweed is. Well, there's a movie about it. No, there's some movie. I haven't seen the movie, but okay. It grows about 5 feet tall, and on top in August and September, it has a very bright purple flower. And the butterflies and bumblebees and everything just loves it. Now, the problem is the same as with the sage. If you don't kind of cut it off after it's gotten to a certain height, and before it's set the flowers, you have to kind of get the stem a little lower, then it'll just go over, which you know, is fine. It still works, but it doesn't look as good. So that's that ironweed, and I've got another set of them right down here, and I could have a lot because it will reseed. But again, when the flower gets to look brown, cut it off, and that's how you keep from getting a lot of the weeds. I bought this fern down at the farmer's market, and the woman said, it grows in sun. And I immediately knew what it was. Bracken fern. Bracken fern. Now, it doesn't grow so much here, but up north, it just grows along every roadside. Bracken fern. And so you can see that it just kind of keeps moving along, and it goes underground. And what I do is, since I can't dig it up and it just loves to grow, I just pull up the fronds where I don't want it to grow, where it's shading something else, and that's not a problem. And then in late summer it'll die, a few of the fronds will die, and I'll just pull them out. It works very well. And there's some more of those shrubs, St. John's wort, right there. Okay, this is called palm tree sedge. And this is another sedge I really like. It's easy to grow. What will happen to it is it will kind of get a palm-looking top. It's going to get that a little bit later, but you can see it right here. It will reseed, not a lot, but it will reseed. So this is different than that sedge. You can see the difference between this sedge and that sedge. This, does anybody know what this is?
Jimson.
Okay, datura. Now, after reading last night what can happen when you eat this thing, I don't know if I really want it. I just like the big white flower. It's very, very toxic. This is a dogwood. It's called rough leaf dogwood. It's a small tree. It actually is fairly uncommon in the wild, according to my research. It has white berries, and it has a nice flower that's just kind of well, you can see where the flower bud was. Right here. You see how it kind of grows? It doesn't grow like a flowering dogwood. It just grows with little flowers. And even though it's uncommon in the wild, it's used a lot for landscaping. And for the very reason that I used it, which is an edge to my area. And it has grown down underground, so I've got a few more. It grows more in South Arkansas and East Texas than it does here. But it's an evergreen, and it does seem to like reseeding, so that's good. I have 2 pawpaw trees down there. And this spring, I looked, and I had 3. And I am so happy, because I know that it grows underground, and I want, you know, a bunch of pawpaws growing there, just like they do in the woods. And it looks like I'm going to get it. Bracken fern to go back over that way. This picture here is of a little wood sorrel, which has never spread. It has pretty flowers early on. Mayapple. I'm moving it over there. I want it under the trees like it's supposed to be. It's hard to move. I think I better move it earlier. It doesn't look too good where I put it. This is hay-scented fern. It is a native. I got it from Lowe's. It had died in the truck, they thought. It was 50 cents a fern, and it does very well. Okay, what's dying there, and I've got more spots of it. This is trout lily, but it is not the native, I found out. It's called pagoda. I got it from a catalog, and it's fine, but I would recommend getting the native if you can. Okay, this is Mount Airy Fothergilla, which they're not sure exactly. It was found at Mount Airy Nursery or a garden or something. And it's smaller than, I guess, the regular Fothergilla. This has been known for a long time. Fothergilla has been known for a long time. In fact, it was named after a doctor in the 1700s. I mean, this is one of those plants that was found in America and taken back to Europe, you know, and then Linnaeus or somebody named it, and so it was one of those plants that just showed up. And of course, at that time, 1700s, 16 and 1700s was when any new plants from America were new, like in China later, you know, so they were all went back to Europe and they were named. And of course, we've got this wild ginger. That tree got really killed in the ice storm, and also it's really not the right place for that tree. That's called a buttonbush. And a buttonbush likes sun, and it likes wet, and you know, it keeps trying to grow toward the sun. And when I bought it, it was kind of a nice shape, but I don't know what I'm going to do about that. But the flower is very unusual, and there's a picture of it down there. It's just a round flower, and everybody always goes by and says, "What is that? You know, what is that?" Spice bush. Now, I kind of also planted that in the wrong place near an oak tree. It's really supposed to go in a wetter place, but it's done all right. And do you know why it's called spice bush?
The caterpillar, the spice bush butterfly.
Well, there's a butterfly that, yes, it is. But if you...
Caterpillar is the cutest thing you've ever seen in your whole life. It's got the little face that looks at you. Yeah. So you grow it for it, and there's nothing else.
Yeah. If you put your... Yeah, it's spicy. If you put your thumb across the branch and then smell it, it smells like spicy. In fact, the scientific name is benzoin. So, and that's a mint. I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of varieties of mint, and my guess is that it's a wood mint. Maybe, I'm not sure. But you can always tell a mint by its square stems. And yeah, just take a leaf off and smell it. It's definitely...
Did you name this?
A lady fern. I thought it was a lady fern. It just spreads so well.
Really?
Yeah, look at it. It's just spreading really well.
Beautiful.
There's something called a shield fern that looks a little like it. So that's my problem with ferns. I sometimes don't know what I've got.
Beautiful.
If I would write it down when I bought it. Now that's a Christmas fern. Yeah, that's a Christmas fern. I have the wild geranium. Now I bought those plants at a nursery, and now they're completely covered with blooms. And they're also reseeding. They do grow slowly. So if you've got a little seed coming up here, it's going to get to about that big in 2 years, and then it'll take a while. So you kind of have to not step on it and, you know, that kind of stuff. This is coming along very well. This is maidenhair. But, you know, I think what I did right about this, it likes cool. And it likes water, and all the water comes down through here, and I think that really works. I planted another one over here, and it never grew. It's just a tiny one, so I don't know why. I mean, they were the same when I bought them, so I just don't know why.
About the geranium.
You see, this is like 2 years old, that's 2 years old. This little one I got from down there. All the seeds go downhill.
I think that's something that we've wondered about with the native plants. Quite a number of them take years before they actually start blooming. Like you say, it'll be that high in 2 years and that high in 3 years.
Right, and so you have to be patient.
Right.
I agree. That's a post oak too. That's a white oak, and these are post oaks. Post oaks have a shinier leaf, and you know the shape of the leaf, you probably all know that. Oh, okay. Let me show you. If you look at one of these from a distance, you can see the leaves are kind of shiny in the sunlight, and there's a particular shape to them, like a cross. You see that? Now they're in the white oak family, but that's a post oak. Post oaks tend to grow on less good soil than white oaks, and that's a white oak. Somehow it got here. They also grow on the south side and the west side of hills, usually, because they can just take the drought. And we've got bluebirds in this nest, so.
He's sitting right over there.
Is he? Is he waiting for us to go away? Okay, these are sensitive ferns. They don't like drought. They will die out in heat. They are sensitive because they don't like the frost. So if they don't die from the heat, they will die from the first frost. But they seem to like, you know, coming up periodically. This is heuchera. It's native to Arkansas, Missouri, and further east, and it can withstand heat. And it makes a nice plant. It never moves anywhere. It does reseed some, but it's a very nice looking plant. Heuchera, H-E-U-C-H-E-R-A. I think that's how you pronounce it. Okay, now I did want to mention this little plant here. That is a goldenrod, and Mary Ann King told me about this goldenrod. It grows in the shade, and it doesn't grow very high. It'll grow about another 6 inches up, and in the fall it will have blooms all up and down it, and so I can put it in a shade garden. Now it reseeds quite a bit too. I've put it in the back where it's very dry, and it's doing well. So actually it can take a lot of drought. So I've got it over there and kind of spread in this area. Okay, to the back. That's the sensitive fern. There's the goldenrod right down there, you see? And it's even reseeding. And this western sun comes down here and it gets real hot on this side. And then the sassafras. Now, I've found some interesting things about sassafras. It's an oil, and it's used for fragrance, soap, root beer, filet powder. Did you know about that? My dad brought that back from New Orleans. Filet powder for gumbo, sarsaparilla. It's been banned by the drug people because it's supposed to cause liver cancer. Really? Now, I don't think they tested it on humans. So I don't think they're quite sure about that, but they banned it. It was a huge export in the 1600s and 1700s to Europe. It was second to tobacco. Never know what you'll find out. Sassafras.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, okay.
Which
right?
tree is the sassafras?
Right here. This is it. Right here.
Oh, down here.
Yeah, that's why you see the mitts, and some are straight and some are 3 lobes and some are 2 lobes, and that's totally unusual. Okay, these plants were dug for you guys to look at and take home in that pot. That's Iris Christina. Give me your phone number. Okay. You have a pen? What did you get? Her work is in the book. Wow, that's great. But it grows fast. Believe me, it grows fast. And that, you're getting the pencil. That was one of Ozark penstemon, and it's blooming already up on that hill. So it's got white blooms, and it'll grow about this tall.